So, who are we? Who am I? These questions will often receive multiple answers, and most of them will be incorrect, or only partially correct. So, this video presentation will cover the report that I made on the same topic. The first chapter presents the black and white bias. So this bias is a shortcut in our thinking processes that helps us to make good decisions. So sometimes it is useful, and it helps us to stay out of problems, to avoid danger. So, for example, think you're walking on the street and you see a person who wears shady clothes, dirty clothes, and he looks sketchy, and you think, oh, this person might have bad intentions, so you stay away from them, and this helps us to stay safe because sometimes this shortcut in thinking will lead us to the correct educated guess, and that person will be a danger to us. So then the fact that we stayed away from them is good for us. It kept us safe. So this shortcut in thinking will often be useful. However, it can also be used to manipulate us, because many times we make educated guesses based on incomplete information, and that incomplete information is not realistic of the big picture of what is actually happening. So, for example, if you see one piece of information about someone, and for example, there's a video, and you see someone do something, and that thing is negative, you immediately categorize that person as a bad person, as someone who you have to stay away from them. But that little piece of information uh, doesn't uh, doesn't show who that person truly is. And on top of that, even if that little piece of information is true, the context is not known. So you don't know why that person did that. You were only shown a little piece of information, and that was it. So you categorize that person in a certain way, but you do not know if your educated guess is correct. So then you act accordingly. But that could be wrong, and that could lead to irreparable injustices. Another example is if you hear a rumor about someone, so you have no idea if the rumor is true or if it is false, but you immediately categorize that person according to the rumor and the options that you have. So you immediately uh, categorize the possible options as very simple yes or no options, and you see them and you think yes, this must be correct, or it could be either this or this. So for example, you heard someone say something bad, and the only two options that you consider are he must be a bad person because of that, or he must be a bad person because of this. And then in both cases, you stay away from them, but you don't understand the context and you don't know what happened. So you don't actually know much about that person, but you took a decision to categorize them in a certain manner based on incomplete information, or even worse, based on incorrect information. So that has to be avoided. A few examples were given in my report, in which disinformation tactics were presented that exploited this vulnerability. So this gap in our thinking can be used to manipulate us. It can happen in a group of friends, so in small groups, but one person manipulates another, but it can also happen with large groups of people. So an entire population can be manipulated to categorize specific people in manners that are incorrect and don't portray who these people truly are. So everyone is manipulated to behave in a certain manner and to act according to the disinformation. So that has to be avoided, and to see this disinformation, to see through this disinformation, you need to analyze the facts. So you need to look at the information that you're given and think about it. Is there a context to this? What is behind this? The options that I'm presented with might not be the only real options. So you see it in black and white. You see it as two options, and both of the options lead to the same idea, but that might be incorrect. Maybe the information that you're presented with is false, or it is presented out of context, or it is presented with a different context. So not the real context, but something that was made up to create this information. So you have no idea about all these things. You do not know that. The only thing that you were shown is that little piece of information. So you have to really analyze all the information that you're given and verify it. Without that, you might think that the only two options that are presented are the correct ones, but there might be other options that you're not even considering to be possible. So you think that that person is a bad person, either because of that or because of that. But these are not the only two options that exist. That person might not be a bad person. So it is crucial to analyze all the facts that you are given. The second bias that was this was described in my report is the confirmation bias. And just like with the black and white bias, this can be used to produce disinformation. Um, so this gap in our thinking, so this bias is also a gap in our thinking because we choose some information that we categorize, we want to be true, and then we look around only for the things that confirm the information that we want to be true. So then we exclude everything that contradicts it, and we focus on what confirms it. And this bias combined with the previous one, the black and white thinking, are a very dangerous combo when you're trying to identify this information, because people can first be conditioned to want something to be true, and then they're given only two options that support that convenient conclusion. So then everyone is expected, or most people are expected, to not to contradict the disinformation, even if they are aware of it, because the disinformation supports what the population wants to be true. So this was explained in an example in which false information was produced. So a false narrative was presented to the population, which made the population hate a specific person. So then the population cyberbullied the person and treated them negatively. And after the population has done that, the victim showed up and presented evidence that they were innocent. But the population didn't like that because society, so that community, that group, had already done something bad to the victim. So if the victim proved that they were innocent, the population would realize that they did all that to an innocent person. So first, the population decided that the information presented was true, even though they didn't verify it. So they decided to not see through the disinformation, even though they could. So this was not it was not an accident. People have the opportunity to verify the facts, to not take decisions based on incomplete information, but they choose not to. So that's their choice. So they didn't decide to look through the disinformation, look further to verify the facts. They took decisions according to the false narrative that was incorrect, and it was didn't present all the possible options. And then when more facts were presented which contradicted what society wanted to be true, society didn't like those facts. So so that the group of people, the population, didn't like that the victim that they harmed was innocent, because then there's no justified reason to harm the victim. So then they were presented with further information, but that information only presented two options. The victim was a bad person because of reason A, or the victim was a bad person because of reason B. But choice C, where the person is a good person, was not even presented. So then the population choose one of these two options, and disregarded the possibility that their victim was innocent, because they didn't want that to be the case. So even if they saw through the disinformation, they didn't counter it because the disinformation was convenient to them. And that's this example is closely resembles what happened in my case. Because basically this is what happened. Society was presented with a false narrative that no one verified. No one verified the facts. No one confronted me about it. And society committed multiple acts of criminal, aggravated defamation and dehumanization against me on a global stage. And after they've done that, so I wasn't even aware of that. After they've done that, and even before, I've always stated that I was innocent, but the false narrative was so complex that no one wanted to listen to me. So then society realized, okay, if this person is innocent, we've done this to an innocent person, so that cannot be true. We cannot let that happen. So then all the information that was presented, which portrayed me as a bad person, was accepted because society wanted that to be true. And all the information that presented me as a good person was disregarded because society didn't want that to be true. And of course, maybe not completely, because the illusion of neutrality had to exist in the context of this specific phenomenon. But basically, this is what happened. So these two biases were used. Society was presented with only a few options that didn't show all the options. They were shown only what was convenient to society, and society chose these options to be the truth, even if that was illogical, because that was what society wanted, that was convenient to it. So the black and white bias and the confirmation bias. So this is a representation of the two biases. So as you can see here, the black and white bias. So this is the target of the potential disinformation, and then they are given the option to choose between option A and option B, while options C, D, and E are not even considered, even though they are legitimate options. So that is the black and white bias, in which two options are considered as the only two options and everything else is disregarded. Now the confirmation bias, it has some similarities with the black and white bias. However, the decision is not made based on two choices that seem the most obvious or the only two options that are given. However, the decision is made on what is convenient to the observer. So in this example, for the observer, for the target of the disinformation, options A and B are convenient. So the observer wants this to be true. These two options support what the observer already believes. In contrast, options C, D, and E do not support what the observer wants to be true. So then the observer only wants these two options to exist, and they disregard everything else. So now, when both of these disinformation tactics, both of these biases are exploited at the same time, so when a disinformation campaign uses both biases concurrently, then that can lead to more complex disinformation, that it is harder to spot, and that it is more effective. So at the end of that disinformation campaign, even if the observer, even if the target is aware, even if they become aware of the disinformation, they are very likely to not address it and to accept the disinformation because that is convenient to them. So the second chapter of my report addresses who we truly are. So addresses how can we determine who we are, and that is a critical point to understand, because most of the information, most of the sources will provide incorrect information. So most of the information will be incorrect. It will be either completely wrong, either it represents a small bit of the truth, but that small bit doesn't reflect the bigger picture, who someone truly is. So if you ask anyone who they are, they will filter their answers, so they will only present to you what they want you to hear. So they want you to see them in a certain way. So that's what they will present to you, and everybody does this. So they have a mask, they have a facade, and they present only what they want others to see, and some things they keep hidden. So they only present the information that makes everyone else see them as they want to be seen. So everybody does that. So if you go to someone and you ask them, who are you? The answer will be incorrect or incomplete. So that you should not do that. In contrast, if you ask someone else, so if you were talking about person A and you go to person B and ask them who is person A, well, the answer could be could be different, so it will provide insight into how others perceive person A. However, the answer can be incorrect because person B can have reasons to make person A look like a good person, or they might have reasons to portray person A as a bad person. So then that answer is it could be wrong, it could be incorrect. Even more, person B could be completely honest, but the information that person B has access to is incorrect or incomplete. So then your final answer will not be accurate. And one way to verify who someone is to go around and ask a lot of people. So if you ask 20 people who person A is, and 20 people give you the same answer, it's more valuable, because it is unlikely that all 20 people had a reason to distort the image of person A. So some facts can be verified that way. However, not even that is absolute. What if all 20 people had a reason to support person A or to say something bad about person A, to bring person A down? So at the end, not even that is accurate. So how do you do that? How do you find out who someone truly is? And I'm telling you from the start, it's not good to look at the good things that people do, since that can be part of their facade. So they can go outside and do something good. They can go to a charity and give some of their money to charity and claim, look at me, I'm a good person. But that doesn't bring that much value, because irrespective of why they did that, it's not accurate. Because they could have done that just to show that they're a good person, but it's easy to do because you go there and you want people to look at you and say, oh look, he's a good person. So he went there and did something good. So that can be part of their facade. So they do something in order to portray themselves as a good person. But that doesn't provide that much value. So you should not look at the actions of people at people's actions that seem positive, because many of them can be done in order to create the illusion that they are a good person, even though they're not. You should look at the negative aspect of people's life. So if someone was accused of a crime, of beating someone up, of violence, of theft, of any crime or anything that can be considered morally wrong, you should examine that. If they say something and you're made aware of information that contradicts their convenient facade, so the information that they present to you as who they want to be, as who they want to be seen as, so if there's any information that contradicts that, you should examine that. So that is how you find out who someone truly is. So let's say person A comes here and says, I'm a good person, I never done that, I never done that, I never done that, I only do good things. Well, it's normal, everybody says that. And even if they accept to a couple of bad things, that's usually done just to create the impression that they're saying the truth. But you should not take that, you should not consider that accurate. So you should, so what you should do is look at the information that is presented about them that is negative, and that is how you determine who someone else is. But you should not just accept the negative information as the truth. You should do a little investigation and find out whether that information is true, because that information could be false. So that leads to the next chapter. How do we determine that? How do we determine if these negative things in people's lives are true or are false? So firstly, it is important to understand that society has already provided a codified way to determine that, and that is the justice system. And the criminal justice system is especially important because it already took all the concepts and all the necessary things to figure out the truth in a neutral manner, in a neutral and objective manner. And they codified everything, and they created a step-by-step process of how to do that. So that is quite rare. So in a real-life situation, no one will create a trial for every little thing to find out if a person A is a good or a bad person. However, if you want to find it out, you have to do that. So You don't need to make an actual trial, an unofficial trial, but there needs to be a confrontation in which, just like in a trial, evidence and arguments are presented. So let's say person A was accused of sexual misconduct, and one lady said that person A did something bad to her, and person A said that I've never done that, I'm the opposite of that, I've never done that, and that is absolute. So then who do you believe? It could be that the lady's friend also accused person A, so then that lady seems believable, seems credible, and person A continues, no, I've never done that. However, how do you determine if person A truly did the bad thing or not? And the only way to do it is through a direct confrontation. So you take person A, you take the accuser, you take everyone else who is relevant to that situation, and you make them confront each other. And everybody comes with evidence and with arguments, and they present their version of the truth. And that is how the objective truth is agreed upon. So that is how the objective truth is determined. You have to take everybody, and you have to make them confront each other. You have to take that negative information that the person might not want to talk about that because it's something negative, but they have to in order to determine if they're a good person or if they're a bad person. Well, you can force them, but if they refuse to do it, that speaks for itself. So you have the option to prove yourself, to prove that you are who you say you are, but you refuse to do that. That is incriminating. So if person A wants to prove that they are who they say they are, they have to agree to this confrontation. And that is how the truth is determined. And this applies to all situations. This is just one example, but you just filter people's lives and you see all the bad things that people said about them, and then that specific information is what they have to be confronted with. And they have to be given a chance to present their arguments and their evidence and prove whether they're saying the truth or not. But that is the only way, that's the closest way to find out the absolute truth about someone. So you never find out the absolute truth, exactly what's in the inner part of their soul, or however you want to call that. That's close to impossible to figure out. But this is how to do it. This is how to get as close as possible to that, to finding out who someone truly is. You look at the most negative information that was ever said about them, and you confront them about that information. But that has to be done in a neutral manner. And the justice system has already provided everything in a codified way, the entire process, step by step of how to do that. So we don't need to copy the justice system, especially if it's not a criminal case. But the concepts that are found there are just as important in a normal real life situation. So this might not be the best representation, but I'm not good at drawing, so this is what I came up with. So number one here, it's who people claim they are. So when you ask person A, who are you? This is what they're going to tell you. Number one is their convenient facade. You should never trust that. That's what everyone says. Everyone presents themselves in a positive manner. You should not trust that. Number two is what others are saying about person A. So this will include the good things, and it will also include the bad things. And here are the bad things. These are the negative things. And that is exactly what you need to focus on. And you need to take these negative things and analyze them. So you need to focus your attention here on all the negative aspects of their life. And you take that and you analyze it and you presented it to person. You present it to person A. You present that information to person A, and you ask them to defend themselves. And they have to be made aware of all the information, and you have to make that process as close as possible to a criminal trial, because that is the codified process that leads to finding out the truth in a neutral and in an objective manner. So you have to make it as close as possible to that, even though that's not realistic in a real life situation. You at least have to try to make it as close as possible to that. And then person A defends themselves, and the truth is proven to the greatest possible extent. So that's how you determine who someone truly is. So the next thing that it's very important to understand consists of the true value behind an action. So what does an action actually look like? And there are two components to every action. There is the actual action, for example, punching someone, and there is the context of that action. So where did that happen? Why? Who was there? What other information is relevant to the situation? All of these things create the context in which this action happened. And the true value of the action consists of action plus the context. If you take the action as an isolated action, that doesn't provide that much value. And for example, think about something very serious. Think about killing someone. That's very serious action. There always has to be some sort of consequence for that. However, that action taken in an isolated situation, so just the action, person A killed person B, doesn't provide any value. The context is crucial. Person A, so if person A is I don't know, is a military person in a war zone and he killed the enemy, he goes back home and he's given a medal. So he is praised and rewarded for killing another person. If person A is somewhere in a city and someone attacks him and wants to kill person A and person A kills the other person instead, it is considered self-defense. So then he's not rewarded for it, but the action is considered justified and there is no punishment. In contrast, if person A wanted to rob someone and he first killed the other person, person A is now a criminal and they will be sent to prison for it. So in all of these examples, the action is the same. You kill another person A kills another person, but the context changes everything. In one example, person A is praised for it. In another example, he's not punished for it because the action is considered justified. And in the last example, he's sent to prison for it. So the context changes everything. So when multiple examples were given in my report, but the same applies to every case. So this is extremely important to understand. Actions by themselves don't mean much. Actions plus context is the true value of what happened. So every action happens in a context. In order to determine who someone is based on their actions, you have to determine who someone is based on their actions in the context in which the actions happened. So this applies to how someone is judged in a trial, so in a criminal trial, but this should also apply to figuring out who someone is. So if you take a video, and if you present a video of someone hitting another person, that's not enough. Because yes, indeed, the action took place. Person A hit person B. But why did that happen? Maybe person B punched person A first, and then person A punched them. Maybe person B threatened person A, and then person A punched them. Maybe person A just wanted to rob person B, so they just punched person B and then took their wallet. You don't know what the context is. The video presents a very limited piece of information with no additional context. And no one can determine that context without person A being present. So that is why the presumption of innocence has to exist until the person is confronted. Because it might be that his action was not a crime. And it depends on the context. So irrespective of the situation, person A has to be brought to court. And then they have to be given a chance to defend themselves and present additional evidence and arguments and so on. And the same happens in a normal situation. Maybe you have a video presenting some key information that happened and that is absolute, or an audio recording that presents the same type of information, something that was said, and it cannot be argued that that thing wasn't said because it was. The audio recording presents it. But everything happens in a context. So in order to determine that context, everyone has to be present and present additional evidence and arguments, and just like in a criminal trial, that will lead to proving the truth to the greatest possible extent in an objective manner. So that is how who someone is determined. That is how to do that. In contrast, most types of evidence are not definitive. So not even the action can be determined. In the case of a video, yes, of course, if the video shows person A punched person B, that's definitive. Just the context needs to be figured out. But in most cases, there are a couple of people who claim someone did that, and you cannot even determine if the action took place. So you don't know if the action happened, and you don't know what the context is. So then this confrontation is mandatory. It has to happen. That is why the defendant always has to be present and provide all the possible information that can influence the case, that can influence the outcome of the case. And you cannot determine what that information is without the presence of the defendant and the presence of the accuser, everyone else who was relevant to the situation. So that was all codified in our legal systems. But the same applies to normal real life situations. The same type of process should be applied to determine who someone is. Here is a visual representation of my previously explained concept. So this is action A. Action A is the same in all three cases. Action A consists of person A shooting person B in the head and killing person B. Action is identical. In scenario A1, that is positive. Person A killed an enemy in a war, they went back home, they got a medal. They were praised and rewarded for their action. That's positive. Scenario 2, person A defended himself. Person B wanted to attack person A. Person A defended himself. It was self-defense. It is neither positive or negative. It is justified. Scenario 3, person A wanted to rob person B. They are a criminal. They were sent to prison. Same action, completely different context. The context changed everything. Actions by themselves mean nothing. Actions plus context is how you determine the truth. There is one more aspect that I'd like to present, and that is the defamation. So, as a result of being subjected to this inhumane phenomenon, I've picked some of the people responsible for it, and I've insulted them on the internet and said quite a few negative things about them. And these actions were taken and they were used to argue that I committed defamation against them. Or not necessarily defamation, but maybe that I've insulted them. And then this was used as disinformation to argue that they insulted me and I insulted them, and now we're all fair and square and we can go on with our lives. However, that is not what happened. So the actions are completely different. They deliberately committed crimes against me. They fabricated false information and they posted that information on a global stage, and they committed criminal aggravated defamation against me. Then they used that false narrative to dehumanize me on the same global stage. Some of them conditioned others to commit the same crimes against me, and that's what led to the conditioning of society to commit crimes against me daily everywhere I went. Moreover, many of them continued to monetize these crimes, and they continue to do so as we speak. So the crimes and the psychopathic intention and the fact that they were rewarded for their crimes was ongoing at all times. And this produced unbearable pain. And people were laughing and dehumanizing me for it. And they were responsible. Most of these people are at the core of this phenomenon. They are mainly responsible for everything that happened, or at least most of the things that happened. And the things that happened represent an extreme series of systemic human rights abuses, an environment that is inhumane. So when I went on the internet and stated, insulted them in whatever way, it's not actually a crime, and it's not a negative, it is a negative thing, so insulting someone is never positive, but in this context it should not be considered negative, and of course it should not be considered a crime. So the situations are completely different. Imagine someone takes you to a torture chamber and they torture you continuously, and then at one point you start screaming and say something bad about them and you insult them. Does it really matter that you insulted them after they tortured you? Of course it doesn't. So they're still guilty even if you insulted them, and they must pay for their crimes. And in contrast, you obviously don't need to to pay anything for insulting them while they were torturing you. So the same applies in my situation. In the context of active torture, of active extreme human rights abuse, I insulted some of the main people responsible while the torture was ongoing and while they were actively monetizing it. So that doesn't make my actions negative in this specific context. So that could be considered a good response, a positive response to torture, since most people have done worse. So that should not be punished. And again, you don't have to take my word for it, you have to confront me, and then I'll prove it. In contrast, what they did is far worse. They committed crimes against me. They did so deliberately and repeatedly and with a psychopathic intent, and many of them monetized their crimes, and many aggravating factors are present. Some of them conditioned everybody else to commit the same crimes against me, which literally took me and placed me in an environment that is inhumane, and a person should never be subjected to such an environment that is active torture, that is an extreme service of human rights abuses. So in this context, they have to be sent to prison, and they have to be stripped of all the crime rewards that resulted from their crimes. So careers, money, fame, etc. So the situation is not I insulted them and they insulted me, is they committed horrifying crimes against me and must be sent to prison, while I reacted to torture in a positive manner. So not in a normal context it's not positive, but in this context it is positive, because I reacted better than most people would have. So again, the situation is very clear. They committed crimes, they have to be sent to prison. I reacted to being subjected to torture, I don't need to pay for that. And I reacted better than most people would have. So that's the situation. Alright. So the next two chapters discussed who am I? Obviously, like everybody else, I did maybe a very few bad things, and overall I'm a really good person, and that is absolute. But everybody says that. And it doesn't matter if they're a psychopath or they're an altruistic person who only want to help others. Everybody responds the same way. They present a convenient facade, and they say that this is absolute. But that's false in basically every situation. There's always something that people don't want to share. So then you cannot just trust my words, you have to verify them. And the formula to do that was presented in the previous chapters. So you have to look throughout my life and choose all the negative things that were said about me, and especially the ones that contradict the facade that I presented to you. So I stated that this is who I am, and then you look for information that contradicts that. So if I said I never inappropriately touched another person, and there are people who claim that I inappropriately touched them, that's where you have to focus. You have to focus on that, and you need to take that information and you need to present it to me, and you need to confront me about it. And again, it's action plus context. That's what matters, because if you take the accusation out of context, the accusation is not the same. The value of the accusation has changed, the entire situation has changed. And the context of all of these things is this phenomenon. So if you take their accusations and present them separately, they're not the same accusations, they're not the same action, because everything happened in this phenomenon. So all these thousands of accounts of aggravated defamation are interrelated, and you cannot consider one without another, because they are all part of the same phenomenon, they are all part of the same context. So if you take action plus context, you have to present to me all the information. So everything that was posted, all the reactions to what was posted, everyone who was involved and so on. And that's because everything is interrelated. So now, in order to truly prove the truth, you do have to confront me about everything. So you need to present me all the pieces of information in order to prove the truth about one piece of information. And of course that would lead to proving the truth about all pieces of information. But the concept stands. because of the mechanisms of this phenomenon, all the accusations, so all the acts of defamation, of aggravated defamation, were made behind my back. So I'm aware that the false accusations were made, but I'm not aware of the content of the accusations. So then, if I'm not aware of the content, I cannot defend myself, because all defendants must be made aware of the accusation. They must be made aware of all relevant information that make the context. So I have to be made aware of everything in order to have a neutral chance, so fair chance at proving the truth. And that never happened. Not only I was not made aware about everything, I was not made aware of anything. So there wasn't one person who showed up and said, this person said this about you. Not once. So that means that no one had the right to decide that any of that information could have been true. It doesn't matter how many people made the same accusation or what partial evidence is provided. For example, if someone said that I was screaming because I had a mental illness and they present a video of me screaming, that proves nothing. All that the video proves is that I was screaming. But the causative element, the context, could be anything. So then no one has the right to decide that I was screaming because of a mental illness until they confront me about it and they present to me the information and the context, and then I have a fair chance to defend myself. So unless that happens, no one has the right to decide why I was screaming. And the same applies to each and every case. So, because of the presumption of innocence, I must be considered innocent. That means that all these accusations must be considered false until I am confronted. And I stated exactly this. I want to be confronted. You made these accusations behind my back, and I'm innocent, and I want you to confront me, and once you do that, I will prove the truth. I'll prove that I'm innocent. And 100% of people refused to do that. That speaks for itself. That is an incriminating action. It cannot be rationalized. The correct action, the only correct action, is to confront me. If they fail to do that, even if they have the chance to do it, that's on them, and that incriminates them. So then, in that context, I must be considered innocent, and they must be considered guilty of aggravated defamation. So, in that context, they committed a crime against me, and I did nothing. So they have to be punished. But instead, what society did was not punish them, reward them, and commit crimes against me. That is illogical, and that is a violation of my fundamental human rights. And that has to do with this very complex and inhumane phenomenon. And if I keep talking about that, I will deviate from the main topic. But that has to be kept, people have to keep that in mind, because it is the truth. So, the next chapter, the last chapter, I presented a couple of actions that have a specific context, and then they were used to produce this information. And that has to do with this specific context, the context of this phenomenon, because everything happened in the context of this phenomenon and not in a normal context. Some of the examples I provided consist of antisocial behavior that I exhibited as a result of being subjected to the extreme series of human rights abuses. For example, and these are two common examples, they happen repeatedly, I occasionally started swearing at people or spat toward people, and these are negative actions. You should not start swearing at people, and you should not spit toward people. That is self-explanatory. Everybody knows that it is bad. It should not be done. And if you take these actions and you present them separately out of context, it looks like I'm a very bad person for doing that. But remember what I told you at the start of the video. You cannot take an action without the context. If you do that, the action changes its value. It becomes a different action. Remember the example with the person who committed murder, who killed another person, and the same action, for the same action, one was given a medal, one received no punishment, and one was sent to prison. It is the same. So indeed, I was swearing at people, and I was spitting toward people. When did I do that? That happened in a context in which society subjected me to extreme series of human rights abuses, rewarded its members for committing crimes against me, and then laughed in my face every day. And, there were specific triggers that were done to let me know that we were still doing it and we were laughing at you, we were dehumanizing you. And in the context of these triggers that were explained in the report, I started swearing and I started spitting toward people. But in that context, the series of human rights abuses was so horrifying that the majority of people would have reacted far worse. So a psychopathic reaction to being subjected to such an environment is the only possible reaction. So then in this context, when most people would have killed you for doing that, all I did was spit toward people or start to swear toward people, started swearing at people, and these are not even crimes. This is negative behavior, but they can't even be considered crimes. So when most people have committed crimes against you for doing what you did to me, and all I did was swear and spit, in this context, these negative actions should be praised. Even though in a normal context, most of the time, they should be punished because they're negative, in this specific context, they should be praised. So this was used to produce disinformation. Society took these actions and presented them out of context, and they stated, look, Paul is a very bad person. But again, the process of figuring out what happened did not take place. Society had to take these actions, they had to take the context, and they had to confront me about it. But no one did that. No one did that. The second type of example, this one actually consists of a crime. Is a series of isolated thefts. So at the start of this phenomenon, I stole money from my grandpa and from one of my employees, and that is extremely negative. If you take these thefts and you present it out of context, the situation is clear. You committed a crime. So unless the crime was committed because you were starving and you would have died unless you committed that crime, it is a crime. But then again, the context is different. It is everything happened in the context of this inhumane phenomenon. So before this phenomenon started, I never stole anything. And if this inhumane phenomenon hadn't started, I would have never stolen anything. So the only thing that changed was this inhumane phenomenon, this series of extreme human rights abuses. So again, the context is crucial. People committed crimes against me every day, and I couldn't go to work because people committed crimes against me as a result of going to work. And everybody laughed about it. And the people who committed the crimes were rewarded for committing these crimes instead of being punished. So, and again, everyone was conditioned to display complete psychopathic and criminal behavior toward me by exploiting this vulnerability that was created when a corrupt government functionally legalized these crimes against me. So everyone treated me as a subhuman creature, and this happened every day, everywhere I went. So then this environment is toxic, it is unbearable, it is inhumane, and people would not. So if you take the average person or the majority of people and you subject them to this environment, it would be inhumane and they would lose themselves, they would go mad, and they would start committing crimes, even though most of them would never commit a crime in their entire life in a normal context. So that is what happened to me. You subjected me to that environment, and that was the causative reason why I had to stop working every 2-3 months, because the environment became unbearable. And that was the reason why I couldn't have a social life. So imagine that, it is impossible to have a social life. If you take someone made a pyramid of needs, and I don't remember the name right now, but that is very important. Human connection was one of the main things that people needed. So the first one at the bottom of the pyramid were the things needed for survival. So you needed to breathe, you needed to drink water, you needed to eat, you needed to sleep, you needed safety. So these were necessary for survival, and the level on the pyramid right after that was human connection. So you need human connection, but when 100% of people around you show complete psychopathic and criminal behavior and treat you like a subhuman creature, you have zero connection, even though you're surrounded by people. and that is inhumane. So in this context, and it happened with everybody, including people that I knew, including my entire family. So imagine how unbearable that is. So in that context, if you commit a crime in that context, it is not the same as committing a crime in a normal context. Indeed, if I hadn't stolen, I wouldn't have died, so it was not necessary for survival, and that's arguably the only reason why someone would have to commit a crime. So you kill someone in self-defense, that's necessary for survival. You steal something because otherwise you would die, that's necessary. So you steal a good, that's necessary for survival, that's justifiable. In this context, if I hadn't stolen money from my grandpa or from my employee, I would have still survived. But this happened in the context of this inhumane phenomenon. So that reduces the negative value of the action. Because again, in a normal context, I would have never stolen anything. And I haven't stolen anything before this phenomenon started, which is ironic because I was initially accused of theft, and this was a key condition to how this environment was created and how the illegal stripping of some of my fundamental human rights happened. But that's a different aspect of this phenomenon. But again, before this phenomenon started, I haven't stolen anything. And if the phenomenon wouldn't have started, if the phenomenon hadn't started, I wouldn't have stolen anything afterward either. So after that point in time. But the phenomenon started and I was subjected to this extreme series of human rights abuses. And in this context, the majority of people are expecting to commit crimes at one point. So again, it affected every aspect of my life. It was 100% impossible to have a social life. 100% of people around me treated me as a subhuman creature. Either passively by not reacting to the inhumane treatment that I was receiving, either actively by actively committing crimes against me. So in that context, when you're dehumanized, you stop behaving normally. Then it is expected that you will develop psychopathic behavior and commit crimes or exhibit some sort of negative behavior that goes against your moral code. And that is expected with everybody. So when you subject someone in such an inhumane environment, it is expected that these things would happen. And again, in my case, I've done this, I'm resisted this better than most people would have. So again, most people would have gone mad and they would have committed a long list of crimes and they would have done so repeatedly. So in my case, this isolated series of thefts have little negative value, especially compared to all other cases of theft. So when you take all cases of theft, they are thefts done for survival, and these are justifiable. This cannot be considered a crime. If they didn't steal, they would have died. So these are not a crime. On the other side, you have crimes that were done purely for psychopathic intentions. Like someone wanted to steal a car, so they went there and stole the car. And these are the ones that have to be punished the most. But in my case, the crimes that I committed are less serious than all the cases of theft that ever existed, with the exception of those that were done for survival. So the negative value of these crimes are very little. It's very little because, again, this happened in this context, in this inhumane context, in which my human rights were violated, and I was subjected to an inhumane environment, and most people were expected to develop this sort of behavior. So then, these crimes, this action that in a normal context have a serious and negative value, in my case, the negative value is very little. In a normal context, I would have never done that. And this can be proven. It is the same with the spitting and swearing. If I look from my entire life, maybe there are a few occasions in which I started swearing at people. Maybe there are a few occasions when I even spitted toward people. But these are very rare, and they were all they will happen in specific contexts. But now you have you have me doing that repeatedly. So every 2 days I'm swearing at someone. Every I don't know, a few weeks, a few months, I'm spitting towards someone. So how does that happen repeatedly? And it happens because of this inhumane phenomenon. So again, everything that happens happens in the context of this inhumane phenomenon. And in normal context, I would have never done those things. So if you take theft, for example, I would have never stolen anything. If you take swearing at people, of course, I swear at people from time to time, and the reasons could have been justified for some of them. Maybe for some it wasn't justified, but that was not done repeatedly. You cannot say, okay, he always swears at people, he's behaving negatively, he's a bad person, because that's not what happened. If you take all my actions, I should be considered a good person. If you take spitting, I don't think I spat at someone since I was a kid. And again, if that happened maybe once or twice. But now, every few months I'm spitting at someone. How is that possible? And when you're a kid, the situation is different. Most kids don't have, so the moral values are still forming. So kids are still being educated. So an action done as a kid is not the same as an action done as an adult. So how is this possible now? And this phenomenon is the causative element. And this phenomenon would have made everybody do things that otherwise they would have never done. Because this phenomenon is inhumane. And when you subject someone to this sort of behavior, it is expected that some sort of antisocial behavior will be produced. When you're subjected to inhumane treatment and 100% of people around you treat you in a psychopathic manner, that is the only possible response. So then how do you determine the truth about all this? And there is only one solution. You have to confront me. Because I say yes, I say I did that, but it was because of this phenomenon. And how do you determine if I'm right? You have to confront me. It is the same with absolutely everything. There are thousands of cases in which I was accused of various things. And the only way to find out the objective truth is to confront me. And this is what's happening right now. I'm saying, confront me. I want to be confronted. You produced this information behind my back, and I can prove that I'm stating the truth. So I'm not running away from the confrontation. I'm doing my best. I'm focusing all my resources to achieve, to get that confrontation. So if there will be a ring, like a boxing ring, but for justice, I literally exist 24/7, 365 in that ring, and I'm telling everyone, come fight me, come on. And 100% of people run away. Why is that? Innocent people don't run away. I'm not running away. I want to be confronted because I know that I'm 100% correct about everything and I can prove everything. 100% of people run away because they know that as well. And to rationalize their actions, they use the delusional system that society created, and they state, yes, he wants to confront us, but he cannot prove anything, and that is absolute. And they say that in order to rationalize not confronting me. But reality doesn't change. If they confront me today, I prove everything today. And no one has the right to decide that what I can prove and what I cannot prove without actually confronting me. So the only logical course of action is to confront me. But 100% of people rationalize not doing that. And that happens for one reason and one reason only. The second I'm confronted, I will prove that I'm 100% correct about everything. This is it. And finally, the end note at the end of my report addressed a possible future situation in which I am killed before I get to obtain justice in court. And that is possible. I hope it doesn't happen, but it is a strong possibility. Because reality is simple. Hundreds of people risk serious prison time for the crimes committed against me, and many of them are expected to actually be sent to prison once justice is allowed to be obtained. And I am aware of that. They are aware of that as well. This is rejected by society because the reality is not accepted, and the delusional system of society is placed over reality. It covers reality, and then society pretends that delusional system would be the truth. But it doesn't change the actual facts. And I am aware of the facts. The people who committed crimes against me are also aware of the facts, and they are also aware that the moment I'm allowed to obtain justice, they will be sent to prison for their crimes. And if they had the moral character needed. So they developed the moral character needed because people were conditioned. Not all of them are criminals and monsters. They were conditioned to behave like this. So they developed the moral character needed to commit these crimes against me deliberately in a psychopathic manner and destroy my life and laugh at me while they were rewarded for their crimes. They 100% have what it takes to kill me in order to bury the truth. So it is 100% expected that, not 100%, but it is expected that some of them will try to conspire against me one way or another and ensure that justice never takes place. And if they need to kill me for that, they will do exactly that. So in order to avoid that, I cannot avoid it. I can protect myself and increase the chances of survival, but if someone decides to kill me, it's impossible to truly protect myself with 100% accuracy. So it might be that someone takes out a gun and shoots me, I can't do anything about it, so then I'm dead. So what happens next? What happens next is someone needs to represent me in court. And that won't play out nicely because everyone who I ever knew is guilty of destroying my life. So they can pretend to want to represent me, but they won't do it properly. They will do it in a corrupt manner that supports their convenient delusions. So who will represent me in court? My reports will do that. So the evidence doesn't change. The evidence is still here. My arguments will still be here through my reports, because I've written them down. So when you want to look at my version of the truth, you look at my reports, especially the ones presenting the proof of no memory loss, because in those reports I present the order of events exactly as it happened. And I stated very clearly, this happened, this never happened. So then my order of events is there, and then you have my arguments, which are written in the reports, and in my many reports, like the report that I'm describing now for this video. So my arguments are written in there, and if you take each report, each of these reports has an argument and it is backed up by science. And then when you show my evidence with the arguments, so the actual evidence such as the recordings or social media activity or in chats and so on, and you combine that with my reports which present the arguments and the line of reasoning, then you have my testimony and you have my arguments and you have my counter arguments, and even if I won't be here, the arguments will still be here and the evidence will still be here, and they need no further, they don't need anyone to present them. You can just present my reports. And then as long as my reports are presented accurately and my arguments and counter arguments are presented accurately and the evidence is presented, no one changes the evidence, then you don't actually need me to represent myself in court, because the evidence and my reports can do that for me. So even if I won't be here, the content that I'm producing now can be used to represent myself in court. So never forget that. If someone kills me, take my reports, take my evidence, and use them in court to represent me, even if I won't be there. So I will be representing myself, even if I will be dead.